It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back at the Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 deck to the commander in front of us in my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description below, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're taking a look at our latest iteration of Loot in Loot, the Pathfinder. A 5-mana 2/4 Teamer commander, having Double Strike, Vigilance, and Haste with 3 Exhaust abilities. Remember, Exhaust is the new mechanic from Aether Drift where the permanent can only activate the ability once each time it's on the battlefield. And I use that as a caveat because we are trying to blink Loot in this deck so we can use his abilities multiple times. He has 3 of them. Pay a green to add 3 mana of any one color, pay a blue to draw 3 cards, pay a red to have 3 damage to any one target. Truthfully, this deck is built to be a combo deck in the sense that there are specific creatures that we can go infinite with Loot with, and we'll talk about that. But I think at the end of the day, we also just want to care about blinking Loot to get more value with him. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. The truth is, I think the deck's very glass cannony, at least in the way I built it. And if you built Loot and you found a better way to do it, I'd love to talk to you in the comments. Because like his last, not like his Foundations one, but like his OTJ Big Score one, it's just another example of a Loot deck where I think I get the skeleton, but I don't completely see the shining lights in the sky. So I'd love to know what I missed, but let's jump into Loot. Well, the truth is, the main combo, and it's not a new combo, Deadeye Navigator combos with a lot of things, but I think the most obvious combo is Deadeye Navigator. So Deadeye Navigator has Soul Bond, meaning when it or another creature enters that's unpaired, you may pair them as long as Deadeye Navigator is unpaired, and they remain paired for as long as we control both of them. And as long as it's paired with another creature, each of those creatures has pay 1 and a blue, exile this creature, return it to the battlefield under your control. So effectively, with just Deadeye Navigator and Loot, we can end the game with just the 2 of them. How basically this is going to work in the grand scheme of things is we're going to try to add mana with Loot, blink it with the Navigator, have it come back down, and use its other abilities, time. So I think ideally we would need to... we probably have to add blue to start, right? So we can blink it, come back in. We'll have to have a couple mana up to be able to tap Loot for the first time. But you're going to effectively add mana, blink, come back in, use his damage, and then still have the mana to blink. And you could do this. I think it's just going to be the right combinations of colors each time. You're going to have to sit down and figure out, okay, what do I need to add the first time? What do I need to add the second time? What do I need to add the third time? You can do this deterministically, sit down and what it would take. And Loot should be able to blink itself, come in, deal 3 damage, blink itself, tap for mana, blink itself, deal damage. And you should ideally be able to burn your opponents out. Marvin's on the screen because remember that Marvin has activated abilities of all creatures that don't have the same name as him. Meaning if he and Loot are out, you actually get to do this even quicker, and you have more mana at your disposal and more damage at your disposal. But it's just there to show you that you technically have a second copy of Loot in the sense that we have Marvin. But this on its own is a 2-card combo. Technically, I guess you could offer this deck to be a 4 because this is a 2-card combo. But, this is a 11 mana worth of creatures we need on the battlefield. So unless we're, having the nuts draw, I just don't see how this is considered to be a 4 combo. I think this is just something where, sure, we can draw our way into it, but it's going to take turns and turns to do it. And in my opinion, personally, if you're comboing on turn 8 or 9, that's where the game's going to end anyway. In an average Commander game, if you're getting to turn 8 and 9 and no one's threatening the board, you're probably down in bracket 2, right? So I think the combo's fair for a 3, as long as we don't play any way to search for it. And we're not playing any creature tutors. We're not playing any ways to do it. We're just, again, going to try to just simply draw into it. I don't advise you aggressively mulligan for combo pieces and things like that, although it is easy to do when you're looking for one other card. But again, remember that Loot can draw, and we have a lot of other ways to blink. We also have other ways to copy Loot. We have things like Sakashima and Spark Double and Irenicus's Val Duplication that can make copies of Loot. Now, with Spark Double and Erenicus's Foul Duplication, well, Spark Double can get blinked, right, and have it come in as a copy of Loot again and get to use Loot's abilities again. So it's great. Whereas Erenicus's copy is kind of not as good because it's a token, right? So you can't really blink the token. The nice part about Sakashima specifically is Sakashima can blink itself back or put itself back to the hand if we need it to. So if we could if you could get into any loop where you can make mana, but you can only use it to cast creatures or use abilities, you could use it here, to bounce loot back to the Sakashima copy of loot back to your hand. The whole point here is that you can get multiple loots if you need to do multiple things on a turn. And then I think the other obvious route here is the bracers that both say whenever an ability of a equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, you can pay one and you can copy it. So both of these will not copy the top ability of loot, but they will copy the bottom two, which I would argue are both not more helpful, but very helpful. Drawing cards is huge. Six cards for 2 mana for the purposes of Battle Mage's bracers and nothing for the Luminous bracers is huge. And then 6 damage is nothing to scoff at, especially if we can get ourselves into the ways where we can blink loot and equip it with the bracers every turn. More manual than the Deadeye combo, but still a good way to dole damage out over the course of a game. But I think where the deck really is going to go into hopefully getting loot multiple times is blinking loot. And there's a lot of ways to do this. Displacer Kitten says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we can exile a non-land permanent, bring it back in. Again, ideal for loot, right? So you can activate loot's abilities, blink it with the spell, bring it back in. Dourport Mage can bump it back to our hand for 2 mana. Remember that loot's top ability makes 3 mana, and he costs 5, so there might be a world where we can play loot multiple times per turn and just bounce it back to our hand with Dourport Mage. Again, it has haste, so it could tap. We would still need an untapper, and we'll talk about the untappers that we have later down the line. Hullbreaker Horror can bounce. Again, Hullbreaker Horror is a little better for our opponent's things, but in a pinch, it could be a thing that could help blink loot if we need to. But now we get into Lily Splash Mentor and Splash Portal and Blur, things that are going to straight up bounce and come back in for loot. Again, the ideal things to get it back in. The interesting to note about Lily Splash Mentor is this is 3 mana to bring it back in at sorcery speed. Because that is 3 mana, we can effectively get a similar loot with Deadeye Navigator with Lily Splash Mentor. So it's good to know that you do have a second one. It just costs a little bit more. It's a little more mana intensive, but it's still possible within the same confines as the Deadeye Navigator combo to do the Lily Splash Mentor. Displace, Essence Flux, Ghostly Flicker, again, just more straight exile. Have loot come back in. I think these are more useful for digging. Getting loot back in to just dig more cards in, right? 3 every time. Just trying to get deeper into our deck to either find the combos or find more pieces to set up more value. I think at the end of the day, when you're building a combo deck, the truth is you're digging for your combo pieces. And we're not going to be we're going to be brazen about that because that's the point of the deck, right? And that's what we've built the deck to do. But I think where we need some pieces are untappers because loot can tap itself, right, to use its abilities, but it has no way to untap itself. So we do need 1 or 2 things if we expect to use multiple of loot's things every turn. Now, mind you, with the Navigator combo, we don't need to untap it because it's just going to blink and come back in and be able to tap. But on a normal turn where we're trying to use loot's things multiple times, we're going to need things to untap it. And so we have things like Kelpie Guide and Kira's Follower and Mage-Right Stone. They're just going to be able to tap to untap something. Mage-Right Stone does cost us a mana, but that's a-okay. Sort of the pay runes, we could pay 3 to tap or untap the equipped creatures, so we could actually pay the mana that loot generates to untap it if we needed to. And again, remember that, all right, exhaust still exists, so we do still need to blink loot in order to use his abilities again. But again, we're trying to approach this with the idea that we know that we can blink him, or we're going to try to set up a world where we can blink him. We're trying to put in pieces around him. Intruder Alarm is really interesting. So it says creatures don't untap during their controller's untap steps. Whenever a creature comes in, untap all creatures. How I'm looking at Intruder Alarm is, so when loot comes in, right? That would put a trigger of intruder alarm on the stack. And my thought would be you could tap loot in response to the intruder alarm trigger to mainly do his first ability, because a mana ability, well, I think you could do all three of them if I could think about it that way, because it's a triggered ability. But again, you could tap loot before it untaps and then to get it to untap every time. So that I think would be very helpful with our combo. But again, I think, obviously we can do the combo without it, but this could be helpful even just with having a regular blank outlet to make loot more effective. Because all of loot's ability are exhaust abilities, we can do things that benefit from exhausting. Both these vehicles have abilities that whenever we activate an exhaust ability, we do something. Refueler draws us cards. Aetherhive gives us Thopters. Again, not game changers, but I think they're both value abilities that really help us, especially Refueler drawing us cards is huge, so we can continue digging through our deck. I think another way to take advantage of loot blinking itself is having it deal damage when it enters. Then it doesn't have to use that bottom ability necessarily all the time to deal damage. So you have things like General Creed and Impact Tremors that deal damage whenever a creature comes in. Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to its power to any target. So loot's coming in dealing damage equal to its power instead of the 3 damage its bottom ability. So again, these are things to keep in mind to help quicken up the combo, right? Instead of having to iterate so many times. I think you're going to save yourself for every 3, you're doing three damage every time, so you're saving yourself a loot trigger every 3 times, right? Just getting damage through, and it's each opponent, not so Creed and Impact Tremors are each opponent. Same thing with something like Perforos if you chose to play it, whereas Terror of the Peaks is just one target. But I think you could see the benefit of getting the extra splash damage in as we go. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. In fact, I'm sure this deck has some flaw that I'm missing, and that's where we can find out in testing. How consistent are we? What are we missing? We have things like Ireth as another untapper option. And I'm not playing a lot of the other things that you could blink. Like you could blink something like a Tali over and over again with these things, right? And get big value for it. I chose to do, I guess, a little bit more glass cannony on the build. So I guess there's probably things better we could do if we really focused on more high-end cards, especially with something like Kinnan, right? Having the mana extra on the Kinnan to have loot tap for 4 instead of 3, and then having that Kinnan ability to keep digging for more creatures, specifically for Deadeye or the Lily Splash Mentor, right? And then now we're trying to find the combo even quicker. I mean, there's arguments for things like Kinnan. I just think it's going to end up pushing us towards level 4, where that wasn't my intention for the deck. But I feel like in an average play group, if you tell your opponents, hey, playing a loot deck where the goal is to blink this thing as many times as I want to, you may end up being more comfortable. That deck may be more comfortable in a 4 anyway. So it's one of those weird ones where I think it's part of me not fully grasping the straws of the deck, plus trying to hinder it in a way that I think probably just hinders what it's trying to do anyway. So I could see definitely the argument for just saying screw it, adding a few $100s more into the budget for this deck, making it a 4 and just making it a tried and true 4. And I guess let me know what you think of that down in the comment section below. But let's get into our playtests. The goal of our playtest is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to determine what our best plays are. It's to try to iterate our deck, play a few hands, try to understand how we build our early game, have a good time. This one, we're keeping a 3-lander with Sakashima, Dowerport Mage for some Blink, and Irenicus, and we actually get to start with a Leyline of Abundance on the battlefield. Whenever we tap a creature for mana, we get an additional green. Again, very helpful for loot, right, where we could be tapping its top ability for mana. So I think we just go tap 1 on there, turn 1. Turn 2, I guess we get the Dowerport Mage in, right? Again, allowing us to draw and bounce loot if we need to isn't a bad thing. We're still a couple mana off of loot, right? So I don't see anything we can do there on turn 3. Turn 4, we see Terror, but we're just not there on the mana for it, right? Which is kind of a bummer. We can get the Perunes down, right? Get it down, at least get that started. And then turn 5, now we have enough mana for loot. Although I don't have any mana to activate him this turn, so we could attack, right, if possible. So now we untap for turn 6, and let's see, we get this Soul Ring down, and now we're going to try our best to put as much value on the board we can this turn. If I tap his top ability, I can get triple red to get the Tear the Peaks down. And I've got 5 mana left. Thinking, make a copy of Loot. Agatha's Soul Quadrant actually does present a fun thing for us in creating combos with other creatures, but I chose not to dump too much into that one this time around. I do have enough mana to bounce Loot back to my hand if I wanted to. Is that the best way to end this turn? I guess I netted an extra green with the Leyline. I could equip him, but I don't really see the point, because he has Vigilance, so he can't get the buff from the Perunes. I think I'll just bounce Loot back to my hand, get the draw from Dower. And then I have this Loot. I guess I could, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the blue's probably better to draw, right? Draw 3 with that Loot. Get the Arcane Signet down. And I thought here is just to try to go into another turn with more mana. I keep forgetting his mill abilities draw. I remember the damage, I remember the mana, but I don't remember the draw. So this one we haven't actually activated anything yet. 7, 8, 9. 9 mana. That's a lot of mana. There's the Penman's Aura, so there's a way to untap Loot just by mana. Ideally, we just want to try to find the Deadeye Navigator now, right? We got lots of mana. So we'll tap the top of Loot to draw 3. This place is going to help me keep digging, right? I'm thinking I displace the Loot and the Terror. That's going to draw me a card off of Dowerport Mage. They come back in and dole out some damage with Tear the Peaks. I'm just trying to think of what I can do. I guess I can draw more this turn. I think we're just going to end up pitching down to hand size here. I love the charm for the draw. I love an offer for the protection. I think I'm kind of up a creek here. I think my only goal here is just to get Deadeye Navigator. Unfortunately, I think that's just the space I'm at this point with how much I've dug in. So Deadly Navigator or Deadeye Navigator or Lily Splash is the plan. So come in as a copy of Loot, tap to draw 3. There's the Intruder Alarm. I was going to say, come in as a copy of Loot, tap to draw 3. We already used the draw on this one, right? This one hasn't used us the mana, though, so maybe we do that. Come in as a copy of Loot, draw 3. Again, I'm just digging, right? Trying to find those things. We could play the Bracers. And I think I'm starting to realize some of the some of the pain, some of the idiosyncrasies of this style of game plan. I feel like the Penman's Aura makes sense, but if I'm gonna blink, I think the truth is I think we're learning very quickly that I think we're just too big of a combo deck. And I think that's okay in the grand scheme of things, but maybe I'm finding very quickly that it's not my cup of tea. I just need a way to blink Loot. I guess put it back in my hand, play it, get the damage, tap to draw 3. There's Blur to get more. The Refueler can help us draw whenever we hit the exhaust. So we could hit the exhaust for some mana to draw, hit the exhaust for some mana on one of these ones to draw. There's the Bracers. Blur this and this, or blur the real one. Draws us off of Dowerport. Draws us off of Blur. Splash Portal. Again, we're digging. We're absolutely digging. We can play Peregrine Drake to untap some of our lands. I think this is where I have to just be honest and say I feel like I just got to find the combo here, which is a bunch of cards left in our deck, and maybe that's brash of me to say, but the truth is, I think that's why my pitfall is with this style of deck. It's just not finding the right thing. So we'll scrap the first one. I think I did my best to dig. I still think there's outs there. Like, I still think if you find a way to blink it, you can deal big damage with the Tear of the Peaks. It's just finding a way to keep doing it. Like I said, we have the draws. We have other ways. I'm trying my best to wrap my head around it. It kind of feels like flubs all over again, where you try to wrap your head around it, but I'm not always the best at it. 3 mana here with a Rampant Growth, Arcade Signet, the Flicker, the Silverwalled Sage. We got plenty here. We just got to get our pieces. Turn 2, Arcane Signet. Turn 3, I'm thinking what, Rampant plus Vessel. Island. Next turn. So we got 6 mana here. We got enough for loot. Silverwalled Sage, I guess. Hold up the Chaos Warp. World Wagon's great. Good way to go get lands. Just what? Loot and draw. And I've got a couple mana left. Play the World Wagon. Go get a mountain, I guess. Again, just trying to get the lands in here. Dig deep. I like the Wilderness Reclamation for the purposes of things like activated abilities, right, on things. Let's see. Luke can either add me mana this turn or deal damage. I can blink him and the Sage. Draw 3. There's the Court of Calling, which can go get Dead Navigator. So I guess I am running a Creature Tutor. I forgot Court of Calling was in here, but that should be enough to get Terror down this turn. And then my thought is this turn, Deadeye 6, and then we'd be able to start the combo. Sorry, knowing that there's a Court of Calling in the deck, like I said, I forgot the Court of Calling was in there. Maybe there's an argument that this deck's more of a 4, but of course, Moxfield wasn't flagging it as a 4 form of it again. Get the Navigator there, and then we're off to the races. Here, 3-lander with Silverwalled Sage for some mana there. We got the Cultivate, Spark Double, Tear of the Peaks. We're in good shape. Turn 1, Soul Ring. Not too bad. We will take it. Turn 2, Navigator. Okay. This is the draw, I guess. Silverwalled Sage, I guess, makes the most sense, because then now we're at 3, 4, 5, 8 mana this turn. Loot's 5. So loot for 5 and then cultivate, right? Just add ourselves some lands. There's my thought here. And then 7 mana and then 3 only for creatures. So use that for Navigator. I've got 4 left. I think there's a world where I can do the combo by playing Tear of the Peaks, but we could just untap our lands with Peregrine Drake, right? And then we'd still have the mana to start this Navigator loop. And then I think we're good to go there. We're good to go on the combo. We'd hopefully love to get Tear of the Peaks down if I can pick up some extra mana. But just for the purposes of doing it, let's walk through the combo. You tap loot for mana. I think you need a green to start. We're going to need to tap for blue. Right, because we need 2 blue for the blink. Blink with the blue. And we're going to need 1 more green to tap for green. Tap for green. For green to start, we just need a blue in our lands. Blink, then tap for blue. That makes more sense. Yeah, tap for green to start. You just need a blue. And then come back in, tap for the blue. And then I think if you keep cycling back and forth, we'll have enough mana to do that. Sometimes it takes working these combos in our head. But let me know, what do you think of loot? Again, I apologize that I'm not as buoyant and confident on this one as I am on the normal decks. It's decks like this sometimes that I just don't get. I play plenty of combo. I mean, I've played combo decks in the past. I don't know. And maybe some of you don't like me for saying that, but it is what it is. I did my best here. I hope that you see that. I'd love to have a conversation about what I missed. I think that's what I would love to hear the most. And I will catch you all next.